Welcome, Deputy Chief Webb.
Thanks for having me.
What is the pay range for a police officer here in Pinehurst, and how does that compare to other towns?
The pay range starts off around 36, 37,000, goes up to about 48 for an entry-level police officer.
Do any of the officers work a second job?
Yes, most of them do, including myself.
Okay.
Prior to me getting into law enforcement, I was a paramedic here in Moore County. I stopped doing that in 2017. However, I continue to work for them part-time, just for a little extra income and a little something to do on my days off.
Is it a challenge to find or hire enough qualified officers?
It is becoming a challenge. I teach the Basic Law Enforcement Academy as one of the adjunct instructors with it. And I've noticed over the last 8 or 9 years, our numbers of students have dropped. Not sure if because of everything going on in society today. The pay range is not obviously at the top of the scale compared to some of the other jobs that they could take. And so some of those may be factors that are deter folks from getting into it. Most people that get into it, it's because they truly want to help.
If your department were to receive the funding to improve one thing, what would you first and foremost want to improve?
You know, I think the biggest thing that we can look forward to doing if we had the funding to do would be to start a police athletic league here. You know, we're becoming a younger community, and it would be nice to have the resources in-house to maybe team up with the fire department and some volunteers to start something that would give our kids just more interaction earlier on with law enforcement.
I'd say specific to Pinehurst, it would be kind of a community outreach, community policing.
Probably our fleet. Cars are always an issue with police officers because they run for almost 24 hours a day sometimes. And so the wear and tear on those is pretty high.
What is the hardest part of your job?
Going to a door at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and telling a loved one that their family member is passed away.
Seeing some of the victims. You especially see the small children or the elderly. When they're victimized, that stays with you.
Knowing that every call you go to, every house you go to, like there's a possibility that somebody in there wants to hurt you. You want to be nice and you want to do the best job you possibly can, but at the same time in the back of your head, you're going through scenarios like, oh, if they reach back here and they don't listen to me, like what am I going to do after that?
As a chief, I think the hardest part of my job is sending officers into harm's way instead of going myself.
How do your weapons compare to those you're going up against?
We are very well armed and equipped here in the village as officers. I have prided myself and our command staff on trying to make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve. I think we've been blessed to have a administration and a council that has supported us to take care of our folks so that we get what we need to make sure our citizens are safe.
So tell us about your life outside of the department. Do you have a family, any hobbies?
I do. I'm married. I've got a dog. We come up with a list of places we want to see for the next 5 years.
Mostly, I am Papa outside of the department. I get to be granddad to 3 beautiful grandchildren, and I spend a lot of time laughing and giggling and being a kid with them. I spend a lot of time in my church. I was a music major before I was a criminal justice major, so I can play just about every instrument.
My family's Puerto Rican, so we're like a big family. So I live near my grandma and my aunts and stuff like that. Pre-COVID, I used to visit my grandma a lot. I try to still, and I'll get groceries for her and stuff like that. I like watching movies. I'm a nerd, so I watch anime and play video games.
My wife, we jokingly call ourselves Law and Order when we run 5Ks together because she's a prosecutor with the federal government right now. My hobbies, I love using my smoker. So I do briskets and pork shoulders. I could go on forever about the meats and things that I smoke, but I really enjoy doing that.
I do. Married wife named Dee. We live here in Pinehurst, so I've bought into the community. I've been here now for about 12 years. We have 3 children. The last one just moved to Connecticut, so we have an empty house completely now.
How's your experience as a police officer different from what you thought it would be before you became one?
Everybody watches TV and sees the running and gunning and things like that. A lot more paperwork than what people perceive. For every minute of action, there's 2 hours of paperwork that goes with it. So it's a lot more time consuming than everybody thinks it is.
So I had like no idea what cops did. I just thought cops, I don't know, drove around giving tickets and stuff. Literally, there's so much more to the job that I never knew. So you have to shift your personality to like fit every situation.
What is a misconception you think that the public has about the police?
I think that a lot of people think we're more serious than we are. I mean, we are serious when it's time to do our jobs, but mostly everyone has been very lighthearted. A lot of clowns, you know, a lot of A lot of people that think they're funny. That kind of stuff is a very lighthearted group. It's not the angry, very intense people that we're portrayed as most of the time.
I believe they think from what, the movements that we see right now that we want to get into violent encounters with them. No police officer comes to work wanting to get in a fight, wanting to have to tussle with somebody, wanting to run and chase a car. We just want to help people. The stress involved, the stress on their family, the hardships that the officer suffers after having to do something like that is not what anybody wants to go through.
That we're superhuman. The police are just citizens that have a job as being police officers of protecting you. We're just like everybody else. We cry, our heart hurts, we laugh, we play practical jokes.
They think everybody's just like jerks. And like I thought, all they did was like give tickets and stuff cars like that. I feel like people fit one personality into all cops. You need to start seeing them as us as individuals instead of just like one cop and then they're all the same.
Would you like to comment at all on the movement to defund the police?
Sure. I think that comes down to a lot of not understanding how police are funded. I've heard a lot of people talk about and seen it on social media, defund the police. But if you understand government budgets, and most people don't, and if it weren't for my experience in government, I wouldn't either. So we hear a lot about police training too, right? Well, when you look at our budget, 80 to 85% of our budget is all payroll. So when you talk about defunding the police, you are talking about getting rid of police officers because 85% of the budget is payroll. That's before we pay the light bill. A lot of people don't realize we have to pay our own electricity. That's before we put gas in our cars. That's before we buy cars. That's before we have training. So our training budgets actually end up being pretty small in comparison to the whole budget. So we can't simultaneously get more training and defund the police. And I also don't think you have to defund the police to fund other things. A lot of the suggestions that are coming out in police reform aren't bad suggestions, but you don't have to defund law enforcement to pay for those things.
There's been a lot of talk in the media about police departments and racism. What are your thoughts on that?
And I've stopped cars at night. I can't tell if it's a male or a female, much less the race of the person that's being stopped. I think there's enough checks and balances in place through our legal system, through leadership, that it would be rooted out pretty quickly. There's always potential for that in any environment, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be banking, whether it be anything. People have prejudices that they have developed or have been taught. But in law enforcement in general, I don't think it's as prevalent as people tend to perceive it is. For the last 10 or more years, we've had minority sensitivity training. So we understand different culture. We understand that what could be considered offensive. We don't tolerate any type of racism or singling people out, to the point that if we stop a car, we document who we stop, the race, the age, so we don't discriminate against age, race, nationality, or anything.
Racism has no business in the business of law enforcement, period. We have to be above reproach, and we have to protect and serve our community, period. Everybody is created by, in my belief, this is not the Village of Pinehurst's belief I'm recommending, this is Earl Phipps, the chief at home papa telling you, we are all created equal by God. He made us all perfect and different in his image. So I think it's important for us in law enforcement to love those differences and embrace them and use them collectively to make our community better. We try to mirror our community here. I think when you see an instance of racism in any profession, it needs to be dealt with swiftly, especially in our job where we're called to protect and serve and defend folks' liberty 24/7. Different, beautifully different, but the same because we are created in his image.
Sadly, there are incidents of racism within police departments, within any industry. And we do what we can to make sure that we're not employing people like that. And that if I did take an oath to serve and protect our public, to defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of North Carolina and enforce the laws of the state of North Carolina. Doing that in a biased way is nowhere in there. And so we need our officers living up to our oaths. And that's the culture that we push at the Pinehurst Police Department.
What motivates you to be a police officer when there's so much negative media?
First and foremost, I want to be the change with the negative media. I want to show the media that there are good law enforcement officers out there that we can do our job, that we can have fun, that we can make a difference, seeing people on their worst days and trying to make it a little bit better for them. That's what kind of motivates me to keep going.
You know, I didn't get into law enforcement because it was going to be a fun ride and the media was always going to love us. You know, we get into this job to make sure that we're protecting the public, that we're putting ourselves out there for people that we don't even know, because our interest is creating a safe community for everybody.
I love the chance to be able to teach younger officers, new officers coming into the profession the right way to do the job.
Just say thank you. Just those two words, man, mean so much.
I don't think a lot of people realize just how far just saying thank you goes. You know, you see a police officer, you see them in their uniform walking around. What you don't realize is they might have just been getting yelled at by somebody, or maybe they may have just dealt with a traumatic call that they were on, or been to a bad wreck scene. And so when people come up and just say thank you, they just go so far, and it really makes your day.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to answer these questions.
Thank you so much.
So I want to thank you for taking the time to answer these
Absolutely.
questions.
Thank you for your job, and thank you to all the other police officers out there in Pinehurst and beyond. And that's all I have for today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Oh yeah, I loved it.
So, last question. How well do you play ping pong?
I don't know how well I play ping pong. Am I about to find out?
But I like to sing. Yeah, I sing along with the radio.
That is me too.
It's terrible, and I sing terrible. But yeah, that's what I like to do. I like to crank up the music, and I have to, in Pinehurst, I have to turn it down because I might be right on top of a house somewhere, you know. What's the chief doing? He's singing to Britney Spears.
If you're out on the road and no one else is around, do you just turn on your siren and go 100 miles per hour?
No.
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 Would you want to do it?
That would be fun, yes, but no. That's dangerous.